السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، ومرحبا بكم في فيديو جديد من مدونتي عن تعلم اللغة الإنجليزية بطلاقة. طبعا في هذا اليوم حبيت أجيب أحد أصدقائي اللي يتحدثوا اللغة الإنجليزية كلغتهم الأم عشان يعطونا انطباعهم ورأيهم على تعلم اللغة الإنجليزية. So I have with me today my good friend and my brother Jaydi, who's going to help us today and give us some information about learning English language. So Jaydi, as a native speaker, now what's the first thing you notice about people who are not native speakers, but did like me myself, for example? Like if you can give us points to look at and try to work on, what those things would be.
Yeah, I definitely think the first thing I always notice is sometimes the use of words where they don't necessarily fit. I wish I had a perfect example for you, but there are often times when I'm communicating with somebody and they may have a that or a there or an and maybe squeezed into a place where you normally wouldn't hear it. You still understand exactly what they're getting at, but you kind of notice it a little bit and you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's a different way of explaining it, but hey, I still understand.
Okay, so do you think with practice they can overcome something like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the more and more you practice at a language, I think the more and more you're going to gain an understanding. I mean, English is definitely a tough language to learn, especially with all the different meanings that we have for words that are the same.
Yeah.
So I think that's a tough part, but I think the more and more you hear the language and you're involved in those interactions, I think the more and more easier it's going to be to learn.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Now, the other thing is that from interacting with people from my background who are trying to learn English, I realized that a lot of them focus so much on rap music. They try to learn English by listening to rap music. I never did that before. I don't even do it now. So because I personally, I think basically it's not a good idea. So what's your take on that?
I agree with you 100%. Definitely not a good idea to use rap to learn English, and I can tell you why. I mean, there's several reasons. First of all, rap industry and music, which I am as well a huge fan of, doesn't necessarily promote the most professional kind of speaking. It's very slang. A lot of words really are holding meanings that they wouldn't even hold in the proper English language. Also, I mean, just the way that they address different individuals or different situations or scenes that they've been in, probably not the best or most professional way that you'd want to communicate if you were going for a career or something like that. I mean, they are speaking English, yes, but oftentimes they're using words that you wouldn't be using in a normal conversation with somebody face to face.
Yeah, I kind of agree more on that. All right, so guys, not a good idea. All right, you hear that? Rap music is not a good way to learn English, especially if you're in the first few stages. You're still actually going through the English language course. That's not something you should be doing. Okay, so if you now, as a native speaker, if you now have to, for some reason you had to unlearn everything you learned about English language, and you had to start learning English from scratch, like, how would you go about that?
Well, it kind of makes me think of how I would learn it if I was a baby, kind of. And I know usually your babies start to learn a language through hearing the communication and seeing the body language that matches the words. That would definitely be, I think, a point where I would start. Okay. But also now having the understanding that English is a little bit of a complex language and some of the enunciation can be a little bit difficult at times. I would like to practice on, maybe different movements with my mouth and making sure that the sounds are coming out the way that they are. I find that English language is very based off of the sounds and the shape that your mouth is making when you're pronouncing words.
So listening has a big part in this.
Definitely. I think listening's the best piece, because a lot of times when you're communicating with somebody, you're not only communicating by hearing what they're saying, but you're looking at their body language.
Okay.
And I think when you're listening and you're observing somebody, it's easy to connect their body language and their motions with the words that they're saying. So I think that that would probably be the first place that I'd start, is put me into a room where I can listen to a bunch of people and watch their animations as they speak. But on personal time, I would probably take a lot of time to practice on making different movements with my mouth that I would see from others that I've listened to.
Oh, okay, okay. The other day you mentioned a very interesting point. You said people who actually, you realize that people who are not native English speakers who speak the language, the way they pronounce, like some alphabets or some phonetics in their languages, the way they pronounce them, you don't have them in English. And therefore, that makes learning the language sometimes difficult. Can you just shed some light on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, every language I think has different sounds that they would create, and different vowels or peaks or lulls, I guess, with the different tones. A lot of the times, a lot of the words that we use in English are using specific mouth shapes and tongue shapes that are never used in other languages. And I think that's a huge portion of the struggle when trying to learn the English language, is that, you know, we're going out and attempting to speak a language with a shape or a sound our mouth has never made before. So a good example, one that I commonly notice in English, is maybe the letter O or the letter R. When you think about the letter O, when you make that noise, you'll notice your lips make a letter O as well. So it's an O, and that's a specific shape that your mouth is making, and a shape that your tongue is making for the tone to travel out in. A lot of times in different languages, those tones or those sounds may never be used at all. So trying to then get into a point where you're going to use them in words, that's a lot of times where you'll see that, oh, okay, I can tell that this is a second language for somebody. That's, I think, one of the biggest struggles that maybe a lot of people don't even really think about or realize, that, hey, my mouth has never made this shape before. That's probably why I'm having a hard time.
I didn't think about it until you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Like me personally.
It's, I can't remember where I heard that. It was a long time ago, and then I started to really think about it, and it made a lot of sense, because I started to try, not necessarily the best, but try to speak words from other languages, and I can notice myself that there's a clear difference from a native speaker versus from me trying to speak their language. And a lot of the times is because I'm trying to make sounds I've never accomplished before. And the human body it learns off of repetitiveness, and kind of like muscle memory.
That's correct.
So we develop a muscle memory in our mouth and in our tongue to speak a certain way, and when we try to alter it, you've got to almost relearn the whole curve. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. All right, thank you very much for your time, and always insightful. And thank you guys. If you have any question for me or for JD, please just write it down in the comments, and we'll be happy to answer that. And thank you very much for watching this video, and wait for more videos from me, and hopefully next time JD will be with me here too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.